We're about to celebrate the Yontif of Shavuos. Shavuos is the day when we celebrate the receiving of the Torah. It's a very, very spiritual experience. More so in some ways than the other two legs of the three pilgrimage holidays. Pesach is about our exodus, our ability to be physically liberated from the land of Egypt. Sukkot is a time where we celebrate our harvest. But Shavuos is the time of Zman Matan Torasenu, Kabbalas HaTorah. And so it's so interesting that the Gemara comments that in connection to Shavuos, it says the word lochem, that this is given to you, and that everybody agrees that when it comes to Shavuos, that we have to celebrate on a physical level. We have to eat meat, we have to drink wine, we have to wear nice clothing, and that's something that's required on Shavuos. Why? Because that's the day that the Torah was given. What? If that's the day that the Torah was given, then we should not celebrate physically. We should do things only that are spiritual. We should sit and study the Torah all day. We shouldn't eat cheesecake. So why is it that we have this obligation on Shavuos more than at other times to have personal, physical celebration? This statement of Rabbi Lazar in the Gemara, I think, expresses a fundamental aspect of Jewish life and Jewish living. The Gemara in Kedushin says that Hashem speaks to the Jewish people about the value of the Torah, and it's compared to a situation of a doctor who tells a patient that so long as you wear this certain bandage on your wound, you can eat or drink whatever you want. But if you take off the bandage and you eat and drink whatever you want, you're going to get sick. And so too, so long as we have the Torah, then we're able to live in the physical world. And the Maharsha explains it a little bit more, because the parable is not a perfect parable. And he says that what's really happening here is that when it comes to the realities of life, one is allowed to eat, one is allowed to drink, but it has to be within the parameters of the Torah. We eat, but we don't eat everything. We eat food that's kosher. We eat, but we have to wait in between milchiks and fleishiks. We have other experiences of physical pleasure, but they have parameters to them. That's the beauty of the Torah. In some religions, they try as much as possible to swear off all physicality. Those who are the most religious and spiritually elevated in certain religions have to go to monasteries or nunneries or other locations to totally separate themselves from physical living. We don't believe that. We believe that a Torah Jew is one who embraces the beauty of physical living, is a person who is able to recognize that we can sanctify that which seems mundane. It's so interesting that over the years, there have been two groups of people in terms of how they related to Sphira. Not expressly, but in a sense. There were those Jews who, like the Tzdukim, like the Sadducees of old, who the Sphira was a time to lead to Matan Torah, to the giving of the Torah. Okay? That there's a recognition of the wisdom of the Jewish people, and so important to be able to celebrate that. But the first part of Sphira, the first bookend, the Pesach part, the idea that we are a Jewish people and that we are entitled to have an independent living and that we have a connection to our land, that was something that the Tzdukim rejected. In later years, there were Jews who embraced the sense of Jewish nationality, of living in the land of Israel, of our sense of freedom from the bondage of Egypt. But they rejected the Shavuos part. They didn't care for the Torah and its messages. We, of course, we embrace both. We recognize that, of course, we are subservient to the will of heaven. We follow the Torah, we observe its mitzvos. But at the same time, we recognize the need to have a land, to have a people, to have a government, to have an army. And of course we want it to be run according to the dictates of the Torah. But we have to have this peace. And boy, do we feel it now. At this time when Israel is at war against enemies that want to totally destroy us, that want to annihilate us, wipe us off the face of the map, we see how important it is to have forces that are able to stand up in our defense. It is remarkable to see what they are doing in such a careful and a civil and humane manner. But fundamentally, what we are saying is that we have to absorb the messages of Pesach and Shavuos. That we have to have the ability, on the one hand, to follow the Torah and to connect to its spiritual values. And we also have to have the ability to appreciate our freedom and our connection to the land and to recognize the message of the Gemara. That dafka, when it comes to Shavuos, at the time of the receiving of the Torah, that's where we recognize that we have to sanctify that which is mundane. And we will say Yizkor over Yantif, and I think we will remember people, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, who were able to live the synthesis, who were able to observe the Torah and be very much a part of this world. One of the people who I have in mind is my father Zatzal, who was a great Talmid Chacham, a top student of Rav Yitzchak Kutner Zatzal, from whom he had Smicha Yad Yadin. Very few people received that distinction, 2 others, I believe. But he was also someone who was so worldly and who understood so much about the world, about culture, about society, about humanity. And it wasn't a contradiction. And when he enjoyed the delicacies of Yantif, it was in a holy and sanctified manner. And that's what we are called upon to do, is to recognize that we can and we must synthesize the best of the physical and the spiritual worlds. We must learn the messages of those who are not here with us. We will continue to do so until the time when we will celebrate Shavuos, as well as all the other Yom Tovim in the rebuilt Beis Hamikdash. May it be b'meher b'yameinu. Amen.